They say a soldier's wars end when he comes home. They're wrong. Mine just changed uniforms, traded jungle camouflage for family smiles, gunfire for quiet betrayal. I'm 74, a Marine twice retired, and I thought I'd survived everything life could throw at me. Then one morning, standing alone at an airport curb with a worn duffel bag and no ride home, I realized the truth. My real war had only just begun. The cold wind off the tarmac carried a smell I knew too well: jet fuel, rain, and loneliness. I stood there at the airport curb, my old duffel bag at my feet, the same one I'd carried through Da Nang 50 years ago. I could feel the weight of it in my shoulder even now, like time hadn't dulled its grip. My son's silver BMW was already a streak of red taillights vanishing into the morning traffic. "We'll be right back, Dad," Nathan had said, his smile as polished as his shoes. Alyssa leaned from the passenger seat, gave me that tight-lipped grin that never reached your eyes. "Don't wander off, okay?" The car door had slammed, and that was the last sound of my family. I stood there for a long time, waiting. 5 minutes, 10:30. People came and went. Families hugged, lovers kissed. Chauffeurs lifted bags and checked watches. My breath fogged the glass behind me as I drifted inside, trying to stay warm. Somewhere a child laughed. Somewhere else, an announcement called for a "Mr. Barrett, please return to the ticket counter." But it wasn't me they meant. Not anymore. The bench near the window was empty, so I sat. The duffel bag sagged beside my boot, the zipper still half broken from 1971. My hands, these scarred, steady hands, were trembling again, and I couldn't tell if it was the cold or the realization that Nathan wasn't coming back. They'd left me. I'd known the moment Alyssa suggested the trip. "It'll be good for you, Sam," she'd said last night over dinner, her fork slicing through a piece of salmon I couldn't taste. "A little time away, a change of scenery. You've been cooped up too long." Nathan nodded like it was gospel. "Yeah, Dad. Maybe see some friends, take it easy. We'll handle things at home for a while." Home. My home. They'd been handling a lot of things lately. My mail, my bank statements, my prescriptions. I didn't ask questions then, not because I trusted them, but because I wanted to see just how far they'd go. Now I had my answer. The airport's glass doors opened and closed in steady rhythm, whispering like ghosts. A uniformed janitor pushed a mop past me, gave a polite nod, and kept moving. The sound of the wet floor sign clicking into place echoed like a rifle bolt. It startled me just for a second. Old reflex. I exhaled slow, steady, the way the Corps taught me. Control the body, control the fear. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the envelope Nathan had given me for the trip. My name, Samuel Barrett, scrawled in his wife's neat handwriting. Inside were $50 and a note that said, "We'll call soon. Take care of yourself." Take care of myself. At 74, after 3 combat tours, and burying the only woman who ever truly knew me, I thought I'd seen every kind of betrayal a man could endure. Turns out, family finds new ways. The intercom buzzed again, announcing another delay. I stared at the reflections in the glass. People moving with purpose, faces lit by phones and screens. My reflection looked older than I felt. Silver hair combed back, jaw still squared from years of habit, a Marine's posture even in defeat. I pressed a hand to my chest where the medals used to hang. "Not today," I murmured. "You've seen worse." Outside, the sky bruised with afternoon clouds. I watched a young Marine in dress blues help his mother with her bags. He looked proud, clean-cut, invincible. I almost smiled. He reminded me of Nathan years ago, before ambition hardened into greed. When my legs started to ache, I stood, slinging the duffel over my shoulder. I didn't know where to go, but the instinct to move, to survive, hadn't died with the war. Across the street, a yellow cab idled, its driver half asleep behind the wheel. I tapped the window. "Where to, old-timer?" he asked. I hesitated. The question hit harder than it should have. I had nowhere. Not anymore. "Downtown," I said finally. "Just drive." The cab smelled of coffee and stale smoke. I stared out the window as the airport shrank behind us, its glass walls glinting like a mirage. They'd taken everything. My house, my accounts, even the dog. I'd signed power of attorney papers 6 months ago, thinking it was temporary. Just in case something happens, Dad, Nathan had said, his hand on my shoulder. You can trust me. Trust. The most dangerous weapon in any war. As the cab rolled through familiar streets, I saw my old neighborhood flash by. The corner store where I used to buy Mary her roses. The diner where the coffee was always burnt but honest. Memories pressed against the glass like faces from another life. Hey, you okay back there? The driver asked, catching my eyes in the mirror. I nodded. Just thinking. About what? I gave a small, humorless smile. About how sometimes the enemy isn't wearing a uniform. He didn't ask again. By the time the cab reached the downtown bus terminal, the sun was low, bleeding orange through the city haze. I paid the fare and stepped out, feeling the weight of the duffel dig into my shoulder like an old wound. My breath came in steady bursts. The mission had changed. They thought they'd left me behind, a frail old man too broken to fight back. But they'd forgotten what a Marine does when he's cornered. He observes. He adapts. He strikes last. As I walked into the terminal, I passed a wall plastered with faded recruitment posters. One of them stopped me cold. The slogan beneath a young Marine's face read, "No man left behind." I touched the edge of it, tracing the letters with my finger. Guess it's just me now, I whispered. The lights flickered overhead, and for the first time in years, I felt something old stirring in my chest. Not rage, not despair. Resolve. They'd taken my home, my money, my pride. But they'd made one mistake. They left me breathing. 6 months earlier, the house still smelled like my late wife's lavender candles. The curtains she'd sewn by hand still hung in the living room, the sunlight filtering through them like soft smoke. But it was quiet, too quiet for a man who'd spent most of his life surrounded by the noise of living. When Marjorie died, silence moved in and made itself comfortable. Nathan and Alyssa had appeared not long after the funeral, like a well-dressed rescue team. "Dad," Nathan said one night over coffee, his hand covering mine, "you shouldn't be alone in that big house. It's not safe. You forget to lock the doors. You skip meals." I didn't skip meals. I skipped pretending. But I didn't argue. Grief has a way of softening your edges, and Nathan knew it. Within a week, I was packing what they told me I'd need, just a few essentials, Alyssa said, glancing around my living room as if taking inventory. "We'll take care of the rest. The movers can handle it." The movers. That word still leaves a bitter taste. They moved everything that mattered, not to their house, but out of my life. Nathan's place was modern, polished, and sterile. It had that kind of magazine perfection that only people afraid of emotion could maintain. Even the air felt filtered. They gave me a room upstairs, overlooking the cul-de-sac. "So you can have your privacy," Alyssa said. But privacy, I learned, meant isolation. The first few weeks, things seemed almost normal. Nathan took my mail to sort through it, saying he'd handle the bills. Alyssa managed my medications, lining them up in color-coded boxes. I didn't realize then how much control I'd already surrendered. At first, I was grateful for their attention, their apparent concern. But slowly, I started noticing things. Subtle things. The phone that never rang anymore. The checkbook that disappeared for safekeeping. The bank statements I no longer saw. One morning I came downstairs to find Alyssa at my desk, my old roll top from the den, typing on her laptop. My file cabinet was open beside her. "Morning," I said, keeping my tone light. "Didn't know I had company." She looked up, startled, then smiled too quickly. "Oh, I was just organizing some paperwork for Nathan. You know how messy things get." Her voice was calm, casual. But the way she shut the drawer, fast, controlled, told another story. Later that week, Nathan took me to my doctor's appointment. I noticed Alyssa didn't come. "She was busy," he said. But when I got to the office, the nurse mentioned how kind my daughter-in-law had been to send over all my medical information. "She even provided your new address," the nurse said cheerfully. New address. I smiled, pretending I understood. But when the nurse handed me a form to sign, I saw it there in black ink. Residential address, 514 Maple Drive. Not mine. Theirs. The next day, my old neighbor called. Or tried to. I found the voicemail later, half erased, her voice crackling through static. Sam, we saw a for sale sign on your lawn. Are you moving? For sale. I confronted Nathan that night, standing in the kitchen doorway. You're selling my house? He sighed, rubbing his temples like a man carrying the weight of the world. Dad, listen, maintaining that place is too much for you. Taxes, upkeep, everything. We figured we'd handle it and set you up somewhere more manageable. Manageable. I repeated, it's my home. He smiled in that gentle, patronizing way I used to see officers give green recruits. It was Dad. But we're just trying to make sure you're okay. Alyssa appeared with 2 glasses of wine, handing him one before taking a slow sip. You should trust your son, she said softly. He only wants what's best. That night, I sat awake, staring at the ceiling fan spinning shadows across the room. The air smelled faintly of her perfume, cold, synthetic, sharp. Somewhere below, I heard them talking. Their voices were low, but my hearing hadn't gone completely. The deed's already transferred, Alyssa whispered. Nathan murmured something I couldn't catch. Then, he won't fight it. He's not capable. I should have gone down there, demanded answers. But I didn't. Not yet. The soldier in me knew better than to walk into an ambush. So I started observing. Every morning, I watched where they kept the mail. Every evening, I noted the calls Nathan made after dinner. And when Alyssa went out, I checked the drawers she left unlocked. It was all there, the slow dismantling of my life hidden under the guise of care. By the end of the month, my bank card stopped working. Nathan said the system was acting up. Alyssa said she'd call the bank. I said nothing. I just watched. On a rainy Tuesday, the final insult arrived. A visitor from the insurance company, wanting confirmation of guardianship. The man smiled politely, clipboard in hand. Mr. Barrett, just a formality. Your son's your legal representative now. All standard procedure. I signed nothing. I told him to leave. But that night, Nathan was furious. Dad, you embarrass me. You can't just refuse people like that. You're confused. Confused. The word echoed long after he left my room. That was the night I understood. This wasn't protection. It was occupation. They'd taken my home, my freedom. And now they were rewriting the story, painting me as a senile old man losing his grip. But they'd underestimated one thing. I may have been old. I may have been tired. But I hadn't forgotten how to fight a war. The first time I realized Alyssa was recording me, I was standing in the kitchen, staring at a coffee pot that wasn't plugged in. My hand hovered over the cord, mind blank for a moment, a flicker, nothing more. And when I turned around, she was there, phone angled just low enough to seem casual. Oh, don't mind me, she said with that syrupy tone. I'm just showing Nathan how adorable you look when you get confused. Confused. That word again. I didn't say a thing. I just smiled because that's what people like her expect from men like me, polite compliance, a nod, a laugh that pretends not to notice the insult. But inside, I could feel the old hum building, the one that starts low in your chest when you know someone's crossing a line. She posted that clip somewhere, I later learned. Dad Barrett's morning mix-up, she called it. Friends and neighbors saw it. One of them even commented how sad it was to see a war hero slipping. I knew then that this wasn't care. It was a campaign. Nathan joined in soon after. Every time I hesitated mid-sentence or misplaced my reading glasses, he'd sigh, shake his head, and say things like, it's just hard watching him fade, you know. Always loud enough for me to hear. Always when someone else was around. It was psychological warfare, and I'd seen the tactic before. They wanted to make me doubt myself. But you don't survive ambushes in Hugh City by doubting your own eyes. Alyssa was the more methodical of the two. She managed my pills, bright capsules, organized in tidy little trays. You're on so many things now, Sam, she'd tell me, clicking through some medical app on her phone. You really shouldn't touch them yourself. Every night at exactly 8 o'clock, she'd bring me a small cup of water and 2 pills. Some nights they made me drowsy, others just foggy. My thoughts moved slower, my hands heavier. I began waking late, forgetting pieces of the day before. It scared me, and I think she knew it. One evening, I faked taking them, held the tablets under my tongue until she turned away. When she left, I slipped them into an envelope and hid it behind the air vent in my room. The next morning, I felt sharper than I had in weeks. That confirmed it. They weren't caretakers, they were handlers. Over the following days, I began keeping notes in a small spiral-bound journal I'd found in one of my old footlockers. I wrote down everything. What time she gave me pills, how often Nathan forgot to give me my phone when the mail stopped coming. I even wrote down the lies, every one they told in front of guests. Because there were always guests. Neighbors, friends, co-workers. They'd come for dinner or drinks, and inevitably, the conversation would turn to me. Nathan would chuckle, put a hand on my shoulder, and say something like, "Dad gets a little mixed up sometimes. We're just trying to make sure he's safe." And I'd smile. I'd play along. Let them think I was the puppet. The night that changed everything came when Alyssa accidentally dropped her phone on the counter. The screen didn't lock. I picked it up, meaning to hand it back, but the open message thread stopped me cold. Alyssa got another clip. He jumped when the coffee grinder started again. Perfect for the file. Nathan, good. Keep collecting. If he tries to contest the transfer, we'll have more than enough. My hand went cold. I put the phone back where it was and said nothing. She returned seconds later, thanked me sweetly, and went upstairs humming. That night I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, the moonlight cutting sharp across the floorboards. I remembered nights in Vietnam, sitting in the jungle, waiting for movement, knowing the enemy was near, but not yet sure when they'd strike. Only this time, the ambush was coming for my own blood. The next morning, I pretended nothing had changed. I took the pills, smiled through breakfast, nodded when Alyssa asked how I slept. But inside, I was recalculating everything. They thought they were writing my story, building their case piece by piece, video by video. What they didn't realize was that every great con has a flaw, arrogance. They believed they were smarter, safer, untouchable. That arrogance would be their downfall. A week later, Alyssa invited a few of her friends from some local wellness club. Over wine and candles, she told them how difficult it was managing an aging parent. "It's like living with a ticking bomb," she said with a mock laugh. "You never know what might set him off." Her friends nodded sympathetically. "You're so strong," one said. "I don't know how you do it." I watched from a staircase, unseen, as they toasted to her patience. When they left, I went to my room, opened the bottom drawer of my desk, and retrieved the small digital recorder I used during my VFW meetings. It still worked. I placed it under the table, where they often sat. The next evening, when Nathan's boss came over for dinner, I turned it on. That recording would later prove invaluable. By the time they went to bed, I had 3 hours of conversation saved, every word dripping with condescension, mock concern, and carefully staged pity. They spoke of restructuring accounts, of expediting medical evaluations, of placing him somewhere safer. Somewhere safer. A nursing home. That's what they meant. But they were the ones who needed safety from what was coming. Because while they'd spent months turning me into their puppet, I'd spent the last 2 weeks cutting the strings. They wanted proof that I was losing my mind. I was about to give them proof they'd lost theirs. They thought I was fading, but they mistook silence for surrender. A mistake many men made before they met the end of my rifle. After that night with the recorder, I began to act. Not rashly, not with anger, with precision. The same way I used to map enemy movements through the jungle, one cautious step at a time. Alyssa and Nathan believed they had the advantage, but they were playing a civilian's game, paper trails and whispered gossip. I was preparing for something else entirely. The first step was reconnaissance. Every morning, while Alyssa went for her yoga class, I'd slip into the study. The password to Nathan's computer was easy. His ego made sure of that. Bar 88. Within minutes, I found bank statements, property transfers, and an email chain with his financial advisor. My name appeared often, always next to numbers that had once been mine. The bastards had refinanced the house I'd built with my own hands. I printed nothing, took nothing, just memorized. A Marine never leaves a trace until he's ready to strike. Then there was the mail. They thought I didn't notice Alyssa intercepting it each morning, smiling as she tucked it into her leather folder before I came downstairs. But one day, I left early for a walk. When I returned, I caught the deliverman at the curb. He looked at me, puzzled. "Didn't your daughter-in-law say to stop bringing it up here? She said you're not well enough to manage it. Is that so?" I asked. "Well, let's pretend she didn't say that." He grinned, nodded once, and handed me the stack of envelopes. That's how I learned they'd redirected my pension statements and changed the forwarding address to Nathan's business. That night, I placed a single envelope on the kitchen table, the one addressed to me from the Department of Veterans Affairs. I waited until Nathan saw it. He froze for just a moment before masking it with a smile. "Oh, Dad, you weren't supposed to worry about those things." "I'm not worried," I said evenly. "Just curious who's cashing the checks." He laughed too loud, patted my shoulder, and walked away. That's when I knew he understood the message. I wasn't as harmless as he wanted me to be. Still, I played along. Each morning I took my pills, or pretended to. Each evening I thanked Alyssa for taking care of everything. I spoke little, smiled often. The quiet Marine routine worked better than camouflage, because silence unnerves people like them. They wanted me docile. My stillness made them uneasy. Sometimes, when Nathan came home late, I could hear them arguing in whispers. "You said he wouldn't notice," Alyssa hissed. "He's old, not stupid," Nathan snapped. "We need to finalize the refinance before he catches on." That word again. Refinance. I'd built that house after Vietnam, brick by brick, every nail driven by hand. It was the one place that had never changed, the one constant in a life of chaos. And now they wanted to turn it into equity. The next day, I made a small move of my own. While they were out shopping, I went to the garage and retrieved the old lockbox from my duffel. I hid it beneath the floorboards of the closet. Inside were things they didn't know existed, copies of my discharge papers, the deed to the house, even the letters Marjorie had written me while I was overseas. And now I added the recorder. My war chest was beginning to take shape. But the most important thing I gathered was patience. Every soldier knows that winning a war isn't about strength, it's about timing. You let the enemy think they're winning. You let them celebrate too early. One afternoon, I overheard Alyssa on the phone, her voice dripping with irritation. "Yes, the evaluation's scheduled," she said. "No, he won't suspect anything. The doctor's a friend. She'll sign whatever we need. It's just paperwork. An evaluation. A psychological one, no doubt. The final step before they could claim full guardianship." I smiled to myself. Let them try. I'd been through enough psych evaluations to know the right answers better than the doctors who asked them. When the day came, Alyssa drove me to the clinic in her pearl-white SUV, chattering the whole way about how helpful this would be. I nodded, kept my expression calm. Inside, the psychiatrist, a young woman who couldn't have been older than 30, greeted me with rehearsed empathy. "So, Mr. Barrett," she said, "can you tell me what year it is?" "Sure," I replied. "The year my son and his wife tried to steal my life." Her pen froze mid-scribble. I smiled. "Just kidding. It's 2024. She looked uneasy after that. The session went smoothly, too smoothly for Alyssa's liking. When we left, her knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "You didn't have to be so sarcastic," she said sharply. "Guess I'm not used to being treated like a child," I said. That night, she didn't bring me my pills. Nathan didn't say a word during dinner. The silence at the table was thick, charged, almost satisfying. I sat there eating slowly, meeting their eyes one by one. I could see the calculation in Nathan's gaze, the fear in hers. For the first time, they were uncertain. They'd made a tactical error, assuming the quiet meant weakness. But I wasn't a helpless old man losing his mind. I was a Marine waiting for the right moment to reclaim it. The night it all truly began was colder than it should have been for spring. The windows rattled softly, and the air carried that familiar metallic scent of rain. I sat on the edge of my bed, listening to the house breathe, the low hum of the refrigerator, the faint creak of floorboards as Alyssa moved down the hall. She always checked to see if I'd gone to sleep. Always listened at my door before whispering something to Nathan in the dark. I waited until the sounds faded. Then I stood. My knees protested, but I moved quietly, every step measured, deliberate. Old instincts never die. Under the bed, beneath a loose floorboard, was the lockbox, my war chest. The metal was cool to the touch, and when I lifted it, dust fell like ash across the floorboards. Inside lay a lifetime packed into steel, my medals, pension statements, the deed to my house, and a small stack of documents proving I was still legally competent, psychological evaluations from the VA, all signed, all current. Beside them, the small digital recorder I'd been using these past weeks. The red light blinked, faintly like a heartbeat. I took inventory slowly, methodically, as I'd once checked a rifle before a mission. Every document, every file was ammunition. Over the next several nights, I made copies at the 24-hour print shop on the corner of Mill Road. The kid behind the counter never asked questions. I doubt he even looked up from his phone. I'd slip in near midnight, the duffel slung over my shoulder, wearing the same old army jacket that made people look twice and then look away. By the end of the week, I had duplicates of everything, sealed in 3 envelopes. One for me, one for a safety deposit box downtown, and one I'd soon give to a man I trusted more than my own blood, Colonel James Jim Monroe. Jim and I had served together in Da Nang, though served hardly covers it. We'd survived each other. He was a lawyer now, semi-retired, still sharp as the blade he used to keep strapped to his boot. But I wasn't ready to go to him yet. Not until I knew how deep Nathan and Alyssa's scheme ran. The next morning, I sat at the breakfast table as Alyssa scrolled through her phone. Nathan came in late, tie crooked, eyes tired. "Dad," he said, "we're meeting the notary this afternoon to finalize some banking details. It's just paperwork." I stirred my coffee. "More paperwork, huh? You two sure sign a lot of things these days." He gave a thin smile. "That's adult life, Dad." I met his gaze and smiled back. "I was an adult when you were still soiling diapers." The silence that followed was worth every ounce of restraint I'd shown these past months. Alyssa's jaw tightened. Nathan looked away. For once, they had no script. After breakfast, when they both left for their errands, I checked their office. I'd learned how to pick a lock from a corporal in '69 using a bent paperclip and patience. That skill came in handy now. Inside, the room was neat, clinical, but the computer was open, and a folder labeled refinance documents blinked on the desktop. I clicked it. There it was, a scanned signature. Mine, on documents I'd never seen. A power of attorney extension, new bank routing numbers, and an application for full guardianship. Forgery. Every bit of it. I copied the files onto a flash drive from my pocket, pocketed it, and closed the folder. No one would ever know I'd been there. That evening, Alyssa served dinner with forced cheerfulness. Salmon again, because manipulation tastes better when dressed as routine. I ate slowly, careful not to look triumphant. When she handed me my pills afterward, I took them, smiled, and let her leave. The moment the door closed, I spat them into my napkin and flushed them. Then I reached for my notepad and began outlining the next step, timing the trap. Every operation requires 2 things, intelligence and patience. I had both. I noticed Nathan growing more nervous as days passed. He was checking the mail himself now, deleting call logs, whispering when he thought I couldn't hear. Alyssa became sharper, snapping over small things, sighing when I asked harmless questions. They were under pressure, and I wanted them that way. Then, 2 days later, opportunity arrived, wrapped in deceit and smiles. "We're having a neighborhood barbecue next weekend," Alyssa announced. "Nathan thought it'd be nice to show everyone you're doing better." "Better?" I asked. She smiled thinly. "After your little episodes." I said nothing, just nodded. Episodes. That was the narrative they'd built, the trembling hands, the hesitation, the vacant looks when the pills blurred my thoughts. I knew what they were planning. A public display. The next step in their campaign, to prove I was losing my mind. Perfect. Because I'd already decided that barbecue would be their undoing. That night I went to the closet, lifted the floorboard again, and placed the new flash drive inside the lockbox. Then I sat at the desk, staring at the medals lined up in front of me, Purple Hearts, Silver Star, ribbons fading with time. Marjorie's photo sat beside them. I traced the curve of her smile with my thumb. "You always said I couldn't stay out of trouble," I whispered. "Well, darling, I'm not in trouble, they are." Lightning flashed through the window, illuminating the room in brief white bursts. I could see my reflection in the glass, older, lined, but not beaten. They thought they'd buried the Marine with my medals and memories. But war never really ends for men like me. It just changes terrain. And this time, I wasn't fighting for a flag. I was fighting for my life. The smell of grilled meat filled the air that Saturday afternoon, but beneath the laughter and clinking of glasses, I could sense the tension like static before a storm. Nathan stood by the patio, beer in hand, shaking palms and flashing that effortless politician smile. Alyssa floated beside him, dressed in white, pure as snow, poisonous as frost. They'd invited everyone. Neighbors, co-workers, even the local pastor. And, of course, me, the beloved father they were supposedly caring for. The old war hero with memory issues. I watched them from the shade of the porch, cane resting against my knee, recorder hidden inside my shirt pocket. This wasn't a party. It was theater. "Dad, why don't you come say hi to everyone?" Nathan called, that patronizing warmth coating every word. I stood slowly, straightened my back, and joined the crowd. I could hear them whispering. "He's looking frail. Bless their hearts for taking him in. He's lucky to have such a devoted son." Lucky. The word nearly made me laugh. Alyssa came over, placing her hand on my shoulder. "Sam, you remember Mrs. Delaney from down the street?" I smiled. "Of course. You still growing those hydrangeas, Martha?" Mrs. Delaney looked startled. "Why, yes, I am." Alyssa's grip on my shoulder tightened just slightly. She hadn't expected me to be sharp. They'd spent months building a narrative that I was slipping, confused, forgetful, volatile. But I'd had a week to prepare for this performance. Every line rehearsed. Every look deliberate. As the sun lowered and the beer began to flow, Nathan raised his glass. "I just want to thank everyone for coming today. It means a lot to celebrate family and community, especially when we're taking care of those who once took care of us." He glanced at me, voice dripping with sincerity. "My dad's been through more than any of us can imagine. Vietnam, the loss of Mom, it's been hard. But he's still the toughest man I know, even when he forgets it sometimes." Laughter. Soft, polite, pitying. I smiled and raised my own glass of lemonade. "You're right, son. I've forgotten a few things in my time." I let the pause hang, heavy and deliberate. Like how I ever raised a man who'd rather steal from his father than earn his own way. The yard went silent. You could have heard a fly land on the grill. Nathan's smile froze. Alyssa blinked once, then stepped forward. "Dad," she said sweetly, "maybe you should sit down." "No," I said. "I think I'll stand." Nathan's jaw flexed, but before he could speak, I reached into my pocket and clicked the recorder. "You all might want to hear this." Alyssa's color drained as her own voice filled the air, the recording from her conversation 2 nights earlier. "He won't fight it. He's not capable. The deed's already transferred. Just keep giving him the pills." A murmur spread through the guests. Mrs. Delaney gasped. Someone's drink spilled onto the patio. Nathan lunged forward, but a firm hand caught his arm. It was Staff Sergeant Leo Ramirez, my young neighbor, standing tall in his off-duty polo, eyes sharp as a bayonet. "I think you should let him finish," Leo said calmly. Nathan froze. I turned to face the crowd, my voice steady, commanding. "My son and his wife have been drugging me, stealing my pension, and telling everyone I'm losing my mind. But the only ones losing anything here are them. Their souls, their decency, their damn humanity." For a moment, no one moved. Then, quietly, Mrs. Delaney muttered, "My God." Alyssa tried to laugh it off, trembling. "He's confused. That recording's out of context." But Leo stepped forward. "I'm a Marine too, ma'am. I know when a man's confused, and when he's calling an ambush." The crowd erupted into hushed conversation. Nathan looked ready to explode. "You've ruined everything," he hissed. I smiled. "No, son. I've just begun." Before leaving, I leaned toward Leo. I'll need a witness for what comes next. Someone who knows chain of command. He nodded. You've got one. By nightfall, the neighbors had gone home, some with pity, others with disgust. Nathan slammed the back door, pacing. You think anyone will believe you after that stunt? I looked up from the table, calm as ever. They already do. He sneered. You're just an old man with a recorder. Maybe, I said, but old men built the world you're trying to cheat. He stormed upstairs, Alyssa close behind, their voices sharp through the ceiling. I didn't need to listen to know what they were saying. Panic has a universal sound. Later, as the house went quiet, I sat alone on the porch. The smell of smoke still lingered, faint and bitter. Leo came over, hands in his pockets. You sure you want to push this further, sir? He asked. I nodded. They started a war they don't know how to finish. He smiled faintly. Then, I guess they'll learn what happens when you pick a fight with a Marine. We shook hands under the porch light, soldier to soldier. Inside, I could hear Nathan moving restlessly, Alyssa whispering frantic plans. They thought the fight was still about money. They didn't realize it had already become about survival. I watched the last embers fade in the grill, the smoke curling into the dark. Tomorrow, I'd meet with Colonel Monroe. The counterattack was ready. And this time, the battlefield wasn't in some foreign jungle. It was home. I arrived at Jim Monroe's law office early Monday morning, carrying the old duffel bag that had followed me through too many wars, one foreign, one domestic. The brass bell above the door jingled softly as I stepped in. The place smelled like leather and dust, like time itself. Sam Barrett, came the familiar voice from behind a stack of case files. You look like hell. Feels mutual, I said, setting the duffel on his desk. Jim Monroe, Colonel, retired, looked much the same as the last time I'd seen him. A little more gray in the hair, maybe a deeper crease in the brow, but still solid as oak. He stood, offered that firm Marine handshake that told you he hadn't softened a bit. Coffee, he asked. Only if it's strong enough to strip paint. He poured 2 mugs, and Saturday, I heard some rumors, he said after a long sip. Nathan's been talking. Claims you're slipping. Then I guess his lies are spreading faster than I thought. I unzipped the duffel, laid out the contents like evidence in a war tribunal. Pension statements, title deeds, signed medical reports, the flash drive, and finally, the recorder. Jim's expression hardened as he looked over the documents. Christ almighty, Sam. Yeah, I said. They've been running an operation. Slow, methodical. Every move aimed at stripping me of control. And I let them, long enough to collect proof. He picked up one of the forged signatures, holding it against an old contract from his filing cabinet. They forged this, he muttered. Not even a decent job of it. That's Nathan, I said. Good at appearances. Terrible at substance. Jim leaned back, eyes narrowing. What do you want to do with all this? I want justice, I said. But not the kind that hides behind court dates and settlements. I want them exposed, publicly. They used my name to build their little image of perfection. I'll tear it down in front of the whole damn town. A slow grin spread across his face. You always did like a dramatic offensive. I sipped my coffee. You still the attorney for the Memorial Parade Committee? He raised a brow. I am. Why? Because they asked me to be Grand Marshal this year. Nathan thought it'd make a good photo opportunity. I think it'll make a better ambush. Jim's grin widened. You're planning to drop the hammer during the parade? Right on Main Street. Cameras rolling. Press, neighbors, the same people they've been lying to for months. I'll have the proof ready, and you'll have the papers. He nodded slowly, eyes gleaming with something between pride and disbelief. You realize, Sam, this is going to humiliate them. No coming back from it. I leaned forward. Good. For a while, neither of us spoke. The ticking clock filled the room. It reminded me of nights we'd spent on patrol, waiting for the right moment to strike. Timing, that was everything. Finally, Jim stood and opened a drawer. I'll need to get copies of these notarized, and I'll file a petition for fraud and elder abuse. We'll freeze the assets before they can drain anything else. I already moved what I could, I said. Pension redirected. House documents safe. But they still think they've got the upper hand. Jim poured more coffee, his tone softening. You know, Sam, you could have just come to me months ago. I could have, I said. But I needed to be sure. Needed them to believe I was broken. He studied me for a moment, really studied me. You've still got that look, he said finally. The one from the day after Hugh. The don't mess with me, I've seen worse look. I chuckled. That look saved my life more times than I can count. He walked me to the door when we were done, clapping my shoulder. You've got the law on your side, Sam. And you've got me. We'll do this by the book, but we'll do it your way. Outside, the sun cut through the morning fog, bright and cold. For the first time in months, I felt something close to clarity. When I got home that afternoon, Nathan was in the living room, scrolling through his phone. Dad, he said with that forced smile, where'd you wander off to? Had coffee with an old friend, I said. He's a lawyer. That made him look up. A lawyer? Yeah, Colonel Monroe. You remember him. He said to tell you he'll see you at the parade. For the first time, Nathan's mask cracked. His lips twitched, eyes narrowing. Why would I see him there? I shrugged. Guess he likes parades. He didn't speak for a long time after that. Alyssa tried to fill the silence with small talk, but her voice trembled. They were scared, they just didn't know how much. That night, I sat on the porch with my notes and a fresh recorder. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of quiet that hides both peace and dread. Leo stopped by after his shift, leaning against the railing. You sure about this plan, sir? He asked. Public exposure's a heavy move. That's the point, I said. They built their lies in public. That's where they'll come down. He nodded slowly. Then I'll be there. Front row. I looked out at the streetlights shimmering on the asphalt, thinking of Marjorie again. Her voice steady, her laugh soft. I could almost hear her whisper, don't let them win, Sam. I won't, I murmured. By the time Leo left, the night had turned still. I closed the door, locked it, and glanced once more at the duffel on the floor. The war chest was ready. The Allies were in place. And in 6 days on Memorial Day, I'd reclaim not just my name, but my honor. Memorial Day arrived with the kind of sky soldiers remember, bright, clear, and too blue for peace. I stood in front of the mirror, tightening the buttons on my old Marine dress jacket. The fabric hung a little looser these days, but the metals still caught the light just the same. Purple hearts, silver star, ribbons of blood and honor. They weren't decorations. They were receipts. Downstairs, Nathan was pacing, adjusting his tie for the 50th time. Dad, don't overdo it today, all right? Keep your speech short and simple. People just want to see the war hero smile. I smiled. Oh, I'll keep it simple. Alyssa hovered nearby, her phone glued to her hand as always. The mayor's going to be there. And the press. Try not to, drift off. I'll do my best, I said, slipping the recorder into my pocket. They drove me to the town square, the streets already lined with folding chairs and waving flags. The air carried that sweet mix of barbecue smoke and brass polish. Kids darted between legs, clutching paper flags. It almost felt like America again, before deceit learned to hide behind perfect smiles. As we arrived, a few people clapped. There he is. Sergeant Barrett, someone called. Cameras flashed. Alyssa beamed for the lenses, holding Nathan's arm, the picture of filial devotion. I walked beside them in silence, letting them play their roles. I'd already given Jim Monroe his cue the night before, wait until the speech. He'd have everything ready. Legal papers, witnesses, even a deputy from the county office. The parade began. The high school band marched past, followed by veterans in open-top cars. When our car rolled forward, the announcer's voice rang through the speakers. Please welcome our Grand Marshal, decorated Vietnam veteran, Sergeant Samuel Barrett. The crowd applauded. I lifted my hand in salute, the old motion steady as ever. Nathan waved too, grinning like a man basking in reflected glory. When we reached the main stage, he helped me up the steps, the dutiful son, cameras capturing every second. Alyssa whispered, remember, keep it under 5 minutes. Don't worry, I said. I'll be quick. The mayor gave a short introduction, praising service, sacrifice, and the Barrett family's example of love and care. Then he handed me the microphone. The noise of the crowd faded. For a moment, it was just me and the weight of everything they'd stolen. My home, my name, my dignity. I looked out at the faces. Friends, neighbors, people who'd believed the lies. I took a slow breath. I was told to keep this short, I began. So I will. My name is Sergeant Samuel Barrett, and for the past 6 months, I've been living a lie. A ripple moved through the audience. Nathan's smile faltered. My son and his wife took me in after my wife died, I continued. They said they wanted to help. What they really wanted was everything I owned. I reached into my coat and lifted the recorder. I've been called confused, unstable, unfit. But I wasn't confused when they forged my signature. I wasn't unstable when they drugged me. And I wasn't unfit when I recorded every damn word. I clicked play. Alyssa's voice filled the speakers. Keep giving him the pills. He won't fight it. He's not capable. Gasps. Murmurs. Phones lifted. Cameras turned. Nathan lunged toward me, hissing, "Turn that off." But before he reached me, another voice cut through the chaos. "Don't touch him." Colonel Monroe stepped onto the stage, dressed in his own service uniform, holding a stack of folders. "Nathan Barrett," he said, loud enough for the crowd to hear, "you've been served with legal notice of elder fraud, financial exploitation, and forgery. Same goes for your wife." A deputy walked up and handed them the papers. Alyssa's face drained of color. Nathan's jaw clenched so hard it trembled. Jim turned to the crowd. "This man," he said, pointing to me, "is no victim of confusion. He's a veteran, a father, and a survivor. And today he's taking back what's his." The applause started slow, hesitant, uncertain, then grew into something fierce, unstoppable. People stood, cheering. Some shouted my name. Nathan tried to leave, but 2 deputies blocked his path. Alyssa began crying, real tears, for once, begging someone to believe her. I handed the microphone back to the mayor and said quietly, "Told you I'd keep it short." He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "You certainly did, Sergeant." When it was over, I walked off the stage, the crowd parting before me. Leo Ramirez was waiting near the barricade, grinning from ear to ear. "Hell of a move, sir." "Never start fight, you don't know how to finish," I told him. Jim joined us, clapping me on the back. "You did it, Sam. You really did it." I looked down Main Street, at the flags waving in the wind, at the faces turned toward me, not in pity, but respect. For the first time in years, I felt something settle inside me. The war was over. Not the one fought in jungles or deserts, but the one in my own home. As we walked away, I could hear Alyssa shouting something, Nathan cursing under his breath. But their voices faded behind me, swallowed by the cheers. I didn't look back. Marines don't retreat. That day, I didn't just win. I reclaimed the only thing they could never forge, my honor. The news spread faster than I'd expected. By sundown, everyone in town had seen the video, the parade, the recordings, the papers being handed over. Nathan and Alyssa's faces were splashed across local headlines before they even made it home. Veteran exposes son's fraud at memorial parade. That one made me smile. I stayed with Jim that night. His guest room smelled of pipe tobacco and old leather, the kind of scent that reminded me of briefing tents overseas, where exhaustion met purpose. He poured 2 glasses of bourbon, raised one toward me. "To victory, old friend." "Not yet," I said. "They'll fight back. People like that always do." He nodded. "Then we'll be ready." But in truth, there was nothing left for them to fight with. Within 48 hours, the bank froze the accounts under investigation. The title transfer was voided. The guardianship order was suspended. And the sheriff's office opened a formal case of elder abuse and fraud, naming both Nathan and Alyssa Barrett as primary suspects. The perfect family veneer cracked overnight. Neighbors who'd once waved politely at them now crossed the street. Their phones went unanswered. Alyssa's boutique closed temporarily. Nathan's company placed him on indefinite leave. The very people they'd courted, the ones who'd believed their lies, turned their backs in silence. Jim handled most of the legal fallout, keeping me updated every morning over coffee. "The DA's interested in pressing charges," he said one day, flipping through a file. "But given your age, they'll likely settle if restitution's paid." "Restitution?" I asked. "They can't pay me back what they took, not really." He gave a slow nod. "No. But it'll make them sweat trying." When I finally went home, the house looked smaller. Dust had gathered on every surface. The air was stale, lifeless, a reflection of what they'd tried to turn me into. I walked through each room in silence, touching walls, running my hand over the doorframes, listening to the floor creak like it remembered me. In the living room, I found one of Marjorie's framed photos lying face down on the shelf. I set it upright, brushing off the dust. Her smile met mine again, warm, forgiving. "Looks like I finally cleaned house," I whispered. That night, I sat on the porch with a blanket draped over my knees, watching the sun sink behind the trees. Leo Ramirez came by, carrying 2 bottles of beer. "Heard they're moving out," he said, sitting beside me. "Where to?" "Does it matter?" he said with a shrug. "People like that, they always find another target." "Maybe," I said. "But not this time." He studied me for a moment. "You're handling this better than most would." I smiled faintly. Spent a lifetime learning how to outwait storms. The town changed after that, small ways at first. Folks who'd once avoided me now stopped to talk, shaking my hand, thanking me for what I did. "Took guts," they said. But it wasn't courage. It was survival. The kind of survival you only learn when you've seen what men are capable of doing to each other, even in peacetime. Nathan called once. Unknown number. I answered anyway. "You happy now?" His voice was raw, cracking between anger and shame. "You humiliated me. You ruined my life." "No," I said quietly. "You ruined your own." Silence on the line. Then, softer. "I just wanted security, Dad." "You could have had that," I said. "You just had to ask for it instead of stealing it." The line went dead. I never heard from him again. Alyssa, I'm told, filed for separation soon after. Her lawyer tried to negotiate, but Jim shut that down fast. The last I heard, they'd both left town. I didn't ask where. In the months that followed, peace returned in slow, uneven waves. I fixed the fence, cleaned the porch, started tending the little garden Marjorie used to keep. The house no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like mine again. One morning, I received a letter, official-looking, stamped by the county. I opened it slowly, expecting more bureaucracy. Instead, it was simple. Case closed. Ownership restored. I stared at the words for a long time before folding the paper and slipping it into my old lockbox. The war chest. It had served me well. Later that afternoon, Leo stopped by again. "You planning to come to the veterans' dinner next week?" he asked. "Wouldn't miss it," I said. He smiled. "You're kind of a legend now, you know." "Let's hope not," I said. "Legends end up dead or forgotten. I'll take alive and stubborn." He laughed, saluted, and left. As dusk fell, I sat once more on the porch. Same chair, same view. For the first time in years, the air felt clean. No lies, no fear, no ghosts except the ones I chose to remember. The war was finally over. And this time, I hadn't come home broken. I'd come home victorious. The porch had always been my favorite place in the world. Even back when Marjorie was alive, we'd sit out here in the evenings, watching the sun fade over the trees, her hand resting on mine, the cicadas singing like they knew the secret of peace. After everything that had happened, I'd started sitting there again every night. Only now, the quiet didn't ache the way it used to. Leo's kids were in the yard, playing tag with a half-deflated football. Their laughter drifted through the air like music. He'd started bringing them over after work, sometimes with his wife, sometimes alone, just to check on me. At first, I thought it was charity. Now I know it was camaraderie, the kind that never fades between soldiers, no matter their age or rank. "Go easy on the old man's roses," I called as the ball bounced into my flower bed. "Sorry, Mr. Barrett," one of them yelled back. I smiled. I didn't correct him, not about the title. Around here, Mr. Barrett had started to mean something again. That evening, I had company. Mary Patterson, the widow from 2 streets over, sat across from me with a glass of sweet tea. Her husband, a Navy vet, had passed 5 years ago. We'd met at the VFW dinner a few months after the parade, and I suppose two lonely hearts recognized each other before words even got in the way. "You ever think about what comes next?" she asked softly, her eyes following the sunset. I chuckled. "You mean after all this?" "I think I've had enough excitement to last another lifetime." She smiled, the kind of smile that carries warmth instead of pity. "No, I mean after survival. After you've already won." That question hung in the air longer than I expected. For years, everything I'd done was about endurance, surviving war, surviving grief, surviving betrayal. I'd never stopped long enough to imagine what came after. The house was mine again, the accounts restored, Nathan and Alyssa gone. Justice had been done. And yet, sometimes, when the night got too still, I'd find myself wondering, what's a soldier without a fight? "I guess," I said finally, "you start rebuilding the parts of life that weren't destroyed." Mary nodded, her hand brushing mine. "Then, that's what we'll do." We talked until the light faded, about small things, the smell of rain, the taste of old whiskey, the comfort of company. When she left, she kissed my cheek and said, "You're a good man, Sam Barrett." I didn't argue. For once, I believed it. The following week, I attended the veterans' dinner Leo had mentioned. The hall was packed, flags hung from the rafters, photos of the fallen displayed on every table. When I walked in, the crowd rose to its feet. A standing ovation. It wasn't pride I felt in that moment. It was gratitude. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't being pitted, managed, or doubted. I was being seen. Leo introduced me to his commanding officer, who'd heard about the Barrett case. "You made us proud, sir," he said, shaking my hand. "Took guts to stand up like that." "Sometimes," I said, "you fight your hardest battles without ever firing a shot." A few weeks later, with Jim's help, we started something new, the Barrett Veteran Advocacy Fund. The idea came from him, but the purpose came from me, helping veterans and seniors recognize and fight back against exploitation. We set up a small office in town, nothing fancy, just a few desks, a flag, and a sign on the door that read, "No one left behind." The first man who came through the door was a 70-year-old Army sergeant whose nephew had taken control of his benefits. We helped him file his case. A month later, he brought me a homemade apple pie. "You gave me my life back," he said. That hit me harder than any medal ever had. Mary joined the cause soon after, keeping the books, organizing meetings, brewing that strong coffee she claimed was better than the Marines ever made. The laughter came back into my house. The loneliness faded like fog at sunrise. One afternoon, Leo stopped by with his kids again. "They're calling you a local hero," he said. I shook my head. Heroes die in deserts and jungles. I just outsmarted two fools who forgot who they were dealing with. He laughed. "Fair enough. But you've inspired a hell of a lot of people." As he left, the youngest of his kids ran up to me, clutching a toy rifle. "Grandpa Sam, can I be a Marine like you when I grow up?" That name, Grandpa Sam, hit me harder than any title. I ruffled his hair and said, "Only if you promise never to forget who you're fighting for." That night, Mary and I sat on the porch again. The stars were sharp and bright, the air warm and full of life. I looked around at the repaired fence, the laughter echoing down the block, the American flag rippling faintly against the sky. "This is peace," I said quietly. She smiled. "And you earned it." I took her hand, the old scars on my fingers meeting the soft warmth of hers. "Some battles never leave the home front," I said. She squeezed my hand gently. "But a Marine never surrenders." I leaned back in my chair, the night folding around us like an old, familiar blanket. For the first time in decades, I didn't feel like a survivor. I felt alive,